Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
27 minutes now to 9 the time. Time to wrap the week here. And it's been, well, a very busy week. I mean, if you look at the big issues, we've got the politics. Ace Magashule, would he be arrested? Would he not? We've got the situation regarding Senekal, the big protest we had, the conversation that sparked. And then in the United States, it's been an absolutely huge week. I mean, the President, Donald Trump, suffering from the coronavirus, debates, vice presidential debates. There's so many different things happening. We invited Chris Hani, senior researcher at the Zuberi Institute for Research Development in eThekwini in Durban, to join us to wrap the week this morning. Chris Hani, good morning. How are you doing?
Morning, Steve, as well as to the listeners. No, I am quite well. And you?
Yeah, all right, thank you. I think like many people, sort of feeling a little bit, it's been a week. I mean, I'm sure you have the same feeling.
Look, I think we've been in this roller coaster of dizziness already for the past 26 years, to be quite honest. And so I can say we are becoming numb, and we are used to this numbness now. And so I think people have accepted to say things will be like this eternally now.
I've also felt that the pace of events for me probably picked up 2015, 2016, here and in other places. I mean, if you look at what was happening at the time, the sort of groundwork was being laid for Donald Trump, also for Brexit in the UK, also for the sort of rise of populism in Europe. And what we started to see here was our politics started to get very, very busy through 2016, 2017, and then, of course, Nasrec and all of that. But this year, with the pandemic, I found it sort of put everything on sort of speed. It sort of made everything move more quickly.
Look, I think the COVID has been a very good thing for us, especially for us as South African citizens, because it has shown how weak our systems, and also it has proven to a number of us who were always worried about the strength and the readiness of our governing party to take us to the future. And now we know as South Africans that, look, we need really to start to have a conversation about the systems, the governing systems, the economic system, as well as the individuals that we entrust with our lives, to say, here's our lives, here's our hope, can you treasure them? And we've seen them that they are not treasuring anything that we give to them through the Constitution. And so I think COVID has given us that opportunity to do an introspection, but the introspection that we do in our own corners, we always look to the future with fear, because we don't know what is there for the next generation, because it seems as if each and every day those that we entrusted with our hope, they are devouring each and everything that is supposed to nurture and protect the next generation.
I saw, and I forget the names, but there was a debate in Europe the other day, in Britain actually, between two historians, and one of them made the point that when you are living through a crisis, you don't quite realize how bad it is. And they were making the point about Britain, but I think the same is the case here. So let me give an example, a South African example. I think that people now realize how serious the assassination of Chris Hani in 1993 was. And at the time, we knew it was important, but we realize now how important it really was and what was actually happening in our society. I wonder if the same is going to happen during COVID and other dynamics in our society generally. 20 years from now, we're going to look back at this time and think, wow, you lived through all that.
Look, I think, when you look at Germany and when you look at number of nations, post-catastrophe, they always emerge strong. They always emerge united. And they always become focused, because they don't want to go back to what they've experienced. But for us, it seems as if we are missing that opportunity. We are enclaved, or we are frozen in the past. Because when you look what is happening at the Lutuli House currently, when you look at the debate that we are having in relation to our economy, when you look at the division that is out there, and when you go back to 1995 when we won the World Cup, when we go back to 1994 when we go for the election, you ask yourself, where is that unity? Where is that trend that was uniting us? Where is the coil that unites us as South Africans? Because we can't go forward as a nation. We can't defeat any catastrophe if we are not united. And so that's my main worry, that this week we've seen South Africa at its worst. We've seen the division. We've seen how people scavenge on the issue of skin pigmentation for their own selfish advancement in politics, And we've seen how wrought those ones who were dispossessed as well, who were oppressed, inverted commas, how can they become villains of nowadays? How cruel can they be in terms of to their own people when you look at the opulency that Saudi and others were exhibiting when it comes to their resources or to their lifestyle through the money that they stole from the poor. That's why I'm saying this week in South Africa, surely a number of people shed tears and they were asking themselves, where are the beautiful people? Are they born or not?
Well, let's listen to some of what happened this week. So the big story, one of the big stories, but I think probably the big story really is in what happened in Senekal. It was the protests on Tuesday by farmers, violent protests. The police ministry spokesperson, Lorenzo Temba, spoke to us about it on Wednesday morning.
Well, the protesters were armed, first and foremost.
And armed with guns, you mean?
That's correct. Some of the protesters had pistols, carrying live ammunition. And from the situation report that we received, it seems as if though the use of force would have really resulted in an escalated tensions, and there would have been a possible crossfire. We know that our members who were present outside the court were armed with rubber bullets, while some of these protesters were heavily armed. So after assessing the situation, they really just made a decision that they couldn't confront, but essentially just use a stun grenade, which was used to try and disperse this crowd. But also, we know that 2 gunshots came from this crowd as well. So the situation was quite hostile. It's not as simple as, comparing it with a different colored group and why these people were treated differently. The fact is that some of these protesters were armed, and from what we understand, this could have escalated to even a further crossfire or even a bloodbath if they were confronted with other force.
Xolani Dube, I mean, you're listening to that, and it really, there were so many sort of South African dynamics at play in that moment, weren't there? Oh, helps if I put you back on. Sorry, Xolani. There were so many moments, there's so many South African dynamics in that moment.
No, what is very sad, even to refer to other fellow South Africans as other people, it's quite evident that in our country we don't see ourselves as united, because to a certain extent, we are interconnected, you like it or not, we coexist, and the fact of the matter that we still revert back to the politics of others, it shows that in South Africa we still lack leadership. Because if you remember, Stephen, during 1994, the ANC, the governing party, took a responsibility that regardless of our past, they will unite us. And the leadership like Mandela stood up not only for the black people, but for everyone, because you use Chris Hani. The moment of Chris Hani, it was a moment that proved that in South Africa we have capable leaders. We have people who are willing to bend their fingers for the rest of the nation, you see. But this week, we've seen silence in the leadership of this country. And that's why I'm saying it is a serious worry that we as South Africans have to ask ourselves, where are the leaders who stand up and unite us? Where are the leaders who are willing to bend themselves for the sake of this country?
I mean, one of the things, and I mean, what happened on Tuesday sparked such a big conversation here on SAFM. I mean, a really big conversation that went on. And I mean, I think we, you know, in a way, we were only just starting it. Someone who sort of joined us for a moment, and I was very intrigued by what he said. Motsepe Matlala is the president of the National African Farmers Union of South Africa. And we spoke to him. We asked him about the attacks we've seen on farms in South Africa.
I think that the killing of people on farms, in our view, should not be politicized to the level where the security of state is at risk. Secondly, I think we should not allow opportunists to use the situation to advantage their own feeble intentions. And thirdly, it is not true and will never be true that it is the white farmers alone that are being massacred, and I don't want to be controversial, but that are being killed on farms. For example, we recently had a Mr. Malebane in Radium near Wombas that was killed, and to date, only one suspect has been arrested. We also have other people, closer to 7 black farmers that have been killed, that I cannot give the details of because of the time limited.
Motsepe Matlala, the president of the National African Farmers Union of South Africa, talking there. And Kalani, I mean, it seems to me unanswerable that the issue around murders on farms has become politicized, perhaps hopelessly politicized.
Look, you know, what really worries me, Stephen, is that we have to give each and everyone an opportunity to go out in a civil manner and raise whatever concern that person is having. That is a democratic right for each and everyone, you know. And also, our government is supposed to be to have compassion, and is supposed to listen to each and every citizen if they raise issues. Because once we start to say, what about the others, you know, or the whataboutism, we are not going to move forward. I think us, as a nation, even if it is the Indians, the colored, the black people, the Africans, are raising issues, we need to embrace their concern. We need to look at those concerns, because the future is always become ugly for all of us if we are going to disregard a certain concern. That's why I'm saying, in this space known as South Africa, we are interconnected, we are coexisting, we need to share it, and we need to be civil to each other. But we are not going to do that if our leaders are burying their head in the sand. Their leaders, they want to be popular by also using the issue of politics of race without really going to the issues that are being raised by people. You know, it will be said that one day, we in future, to be quite honest, because the issue of food security is a serious issue in our country. And also, we have seen people in the taxi industry being given an ear, being given an opportunity to express themselves. I think that the responsibility of the government to teach us as citizens to say, look, regardless, we have to hear each other. Regardless, we need not to look most of the time at the issue of skin pigmentation. Let's look at the content so that at the end of the day, we can be very objective in our analysis. Because if we start from subjective analysis that is factored by a number of other factors, we'll never reach an objective solution. And so I think we need leadership that is going to start now, unite us, that is going to start to show us that as a nation, we need to coexist. As a nation, we need to tolerate each other.
I mean, one of the things we're seeing, really, is that the extremes are dominating the public debate, and bluntly, EFF and AfriForum.
Look, you know, it's not for the first time, Stephen. There was a Eugene Terry Blanche, you know, and others, they were saying IFP was too radical in KwaZulu-Natal, But as I am saying, it took leadership to cool off fires. It took humbleness from the leadership. You remember what the AWB did in Kodesa. Those negotiations nearly failed. They were aiming for the civil war in our country. See, the leaders then, they never said, these are the Afrikaners who's going to listen to them. No one ever said, this is Mangosuthu is a traditionalist who was working with, inverted commas, with the former apartheid. We're not going to listen to him. But they said, look, we need to listen to each and everyone for the future, for the sake of the future. That's why we are here. We are here because of conventions that were made. Some of those conventions were bad. Some of them, they were bitter for us. But we are existing. Try to revisit them each and every day. And so in life, you don't simply get everything, Even if you give a child a candy, you restrict a child to say, you have two, you'll have another one tomorrow. Regardless, we need tough love. That's what the ANC, that's what the leaders of this country in 1994 gave us. It was tough love. And so that's what is supposed to happen even now, but we don't see it.
We're speaking to Xolani Dube, Senior Researcher at the Zuberi Institute for Research Development, wrapping the week. He's with us through until 9 o'clock, just gone 11 minutes now to 9.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
9 minutes now to 9 the time. Okay, we're wrapping the week with Xolani Dube, Senior Researcher at the Zuberi Institute for Research Development. Xolani, one of the big stories this week is around Ace Magashule. There was the report in independent newspapers that he was going to be arrested. Then the Hawks denied it. Then he said he was. And we spoke to Victor Nkwashu. He's the attorney for Ace Magashule. This is how that played out.
Well, what we've seen is an article by IOL stating that there is a warrant issued against our client. We've also read a media release by the Hawks stating that they distance themselves. However, as you know, that there is also a unit called the Independent Directorate within the office of the NPA headed by Advocate Grenier. They have not responded, and we have an instruction to engage with Advocate Batoi, Advocate Grenier, as well as the Hawks, to find out if this article has any truth into it.
So at this stage, you don't know if people want to arrest your clients or not. And the reason, I'm sure you'll know this better than I do, Victor, there are situations, we actually saw some of them last week, where there will be a conversation between prosecutors and the police and lawyers before an arrest. None of that's happened. No one's got in touch and said, look, we want to speak to your client, we want to arrest your client. None of those things have happened in the background to this.
None of those things have happened.
Okay. And if your client were to be arrested or charged, do you have an instruction on whether he would plead innocent or guilty? Do you believe is your client saying that he's innocent of any charges against him?
Well, Stephen, you'll know yourself that until you know what the charges are, you cannot decide on a plea.
Of course.
You can only decide once you've been given the charges, you've been given the contents of the docket and the charge sheet or indictment, or whatever the state would intend to do.
I was very much trying my luck with Victor Nkwashu earlier this week, the attorney for Ace Magashule. Xolani Dube, the Ace Magashule story is fascinating. It brings, in a way, to a climax so many political dynamics that we've been seeing, and it really shows you where the law and the politics intersect.
You see, what you are saying is a very interesting thing, because there is kind of a cascading effect here with this issue of Ace Magashule before I go to his issue. When the governing party is failing to hold, or if the center is not holding, this is the governing party. If the governing party, there is anarchy within itself, but it's the governing party, I can assure you, everyone will assimilate that kind of behavior. If the governing party is not respecting the institutions that's supposed to govern us, like your judiciary, your investigating institution, and the police and everything, I can assure you, the citizens will say, these people, they don't lead by an example. And so while we have to respect things that they always tell us to respect. And so the anarchy that you see at the Luthuli House is going to is what is going to happen in our country, where everyone at the end of the day say, why I am supposed to be arrested if so and so is stolen so much, but they can argue. And so the issue of Ace on the other side, it gave us a very frightening kind of a feel when it comes to the media, to say, how can the media, the people that are supposed to be the guardian of the guardians in our society, can be embroiled, can be used by the same people that they need to guard, And so we as citizens now, when we read newspapers, when we listen to Stephen or we listen to whoever coming on radio telling us about the ANC, we're no longer knowing the truth. Whether is this the real thing or not? Possible the rise of fascism is also giving an opportunity to the fake news. And so we are in that particular period where we as citizens of South Africa, we're no longer knowing what is right and what is true. But what we see each and every day is the destruction of the institution that the ANC and the other leaders of this country created in 1994.
Sure, I mean, it's quite a strong comment that you're making there. I mean, if Ace Magashule, and the big sort of conversation, the big sort of speculation is that if Ace Magashule were to be arrested, would he have to step aside? Do you think that he would?
Look, it's clear, Stephen. In the ANC, the line has been drawn in the sand now. There is those who are on the other side of Babu Cyril Ramaphosa, and there are those on the other side of Babu Ace. It's clear. We need not to sugarcoat anything now. Because we can see people yesterday, they were there supporting Ace, and when you hear other people are supporting Cyril Ramaphosa, the question is, why we as South Africans are supposed to be sandwiched in these factional battles of the ANC? Why we have to really expect wars now and again in the ANC? At whose interest are these wars being fought? That is the real thing that you have to ask, because they are not fought at the interest of us, people who are poor, have issues of asbestos. People who are poor are having issues in the mining sectors. People who are poor are having issues of unfair discrimination, of racism and so forth. People who are poor, they have issues of saying, look, we are being killed now and again, but we don't hear ANC fighting over these issues, because we thought that ANC would be fighting over these issues. When you go back to the history of ANC, you hear the debates of Babu Herikwala, of Babu Government, of Mandela, and the others. They were not fighting about patronage. It was not about themselves. It was about the future of this country. But in post-1994, we've seen leaders fighting for themselves. We've seen leaders using people who are poor to fight for their battles, of which, that's why I'm saying, maybe we no longer have ANC. We have something that we don't know, that we have to do a proper analysis of saying, what are we dealing with here? So that we as society, we know our standpoint and we know where we are going as a society. Because if we still believe that the ANC of Cyril, the ANC of Ace Magashule is the ANC of Herikwala and Mandela, trust me, we are going down to hell.
Sure. Kalani, I mean, you talk about a country with difficult politics very quickly. You've got a minute left, but the United States, I mean, where do you even start with that at the moment?
Look, United States, the center is there. The institutions are strong, as you can hear. Everything is strong, just like Britain. Britain, they changed prime ministers, I don't know how many times. It was Brown, and then it was Theresa May, and now it's Boris. Same thing in Tunisia. These countries are teaching us that people are not important, but institutions, systems, and structures, they are very important. Those are the things that we need to protect. But here in South Africa, it's vice versa. We protect people and then we destroy the institutions, And so in the US, whether it's Trump or whether it's Joe, anyone will emerge to protect, and he will be guided by this institution. As you can see, Fox and CNN and so forth, they always fight for the soul of the USA. Here in South Africa, is IOL, is Daily Maverick, is SABC, E-News fighting for the soul of the South African, or they are fighting for the soul of Cyril, fighting for the soul of Ace Magashule.
Kulane Dube, I'm afraid I have to leave it there. Thank you so much. Senior Researcher at the Zubair Institute for Research Development.